Okay, a little bit of a new idea. Suppose the remainder is 0 when we divide. So this is kind of a weird way to write it, but we're dividing the f of x by the x minus k. And when we do that, we get an answer, q. And our remainder is 0. So yes, we wrote it over the divisor, the thing that we use to divide. We always write it over. We always write our remainder over our divisor, if we're going to write it like that. But there's nothing there. It's 0. So it's just q without the no remainder because it's 0. Okay. So what if we divide by x minus k? Well, that means that x minus k is a factor then. If it goes into it evenly, if x minus k, and k could be whatever constant you want, x minus 2 or something. Down here we're going to do x plus 2. So that's our factor. So in this case, k down here would be equal to minus 2. Because if I subtract a minus 2, I get a plus 2. Okay, anyway. If I do that, and I get 0, then that's a factor. Okay, so notice, kind of a strange thing. If the factor is x minus 2, let me try to muddy it a little bit more. If x plus 2 is the factor, then the number I'm going to use to synthetically divide is the root, negative 2, or the 0, if you prefer I say the 0. And remember, when we find x plus 2 as a factor, x is equal to minus 2. Because what goes with plus 2 to make 0? Well, minus 2. So the root is minus 2. And the factor, however, is x plus 2. And if we take that root, if we take that 0, negative 2, and we synthetically divide, we bring down the 3, and we say negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And we add, and we say negative 10. Okay, negative 2 times negative 10. That's positive 20. And we add, and we get negative 8. And we say, okay, negative 2 times negative 8. That's positive 16. And we add, and we get 0. Hey, 0. Okay, if we get 0, that means that was a factor. That means that I have a 0 at negative 2, and x plus 2 is a factor of this polynomial. Oh, and by the way, something I probably didn't emphasize very well last time. This 3 and this negative 10 and this negative 8, they mean something. If I started up here with 3x to the third, and I divided, I know it's synthetic division, but I'm still dividing. If I divided by x, then I'm down to x squared now. So I'm going to have x squared instead of x to the third. And what would my coefficient be? Well, it'd be right here, that 3. Okay? So I'm going to put 3. And then what's the next coefficient? Well, negative 10. Okay? So I'm going to say negative 10, and I'm working my way down here. X squared goes to x. And then my constant is minus 8. Okay? So I'm using these coefficients. Here they are. Same numbers. And that, if you look down here, that's one of my factors. And the other factor is this x plus 2 up here. X plus 2. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll get rid of that and just let this be. Yeah. So it's a factor. So I can write it that way, and it's factored. And then they say, they take it a step further, and they say, we can factor that into that. And they do. They keep going until the bitter end. And once they get it down to where you can't factor it anymore, then it's completely factored. And we want to completely factor this thing. So if we see another way to factor it, we have to keep going. But we're going to break through the first layer, because let me just pause here for a second. We have the quadratic formula. X is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And that's great for formulas that say a x squared plus b x plus c is equal to 0. And notice that it's x squared, okay? But what do we do? What do we do when we start out with x to the third? Uh-oh. There is a formula for that, but you don't want to see it. And it's not easy, and basically we don't have formulas for polynomials that go on up in degree. So we have to do something, and if they tell us one of the factors, we can just divide, and that'll whittle it down to the next degree. So in this case, my x to the third is going to become x squared. So we're going to do that. We're going to say, here we go, x minus 4 is a factor, so that means I'm going to use plus 4. Okay, so I'm going to say plus 4 in my synthetic division, and then I'm going to use these coefficients. There's a 1 out in front there, right? So I say 1. And then there's a minus 1, right? So I say minus 1. And then there's a negative 22, so I use negative 22. And they're not skipping any x's, right? I went x to the third, squared, 1, no x. Okay, so they're not skipping anything, so neither am I. And plus 40, okay. And I leave a little space, and I start doing my thing. I bring down the 1. Okay, now I say 4 times 1. 4 times 1 is 4, and I write it right here. And then I add, okay? And I say negative 1, 4 is 3. And then I say, 4 times 3. All right, 4 times 3 is 12. And I write it here, and I add. And that's going to be negative 10. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to say 4 times negative 10. And I get negative 40. And I say, oh, look, plus 40, when I add these together, I get 0. Well, that was supposed to. They told me it is a factor, so if I didn't get 0, I'd be kind of suspicious about the whole problem. I'd go back and check my work, I suppose, is what I would do. So, okay, now I can write this again. I can say, I know that x minus 4 is a factor. So x minus 4 is a factor. And then what's left? Well, I have this 1 right there. So I'm going to say 1. I'm not actually going to say 1. I'm just going to say x squared. And then I'm going to say 3. So plus 3. Looks like a plus 3 to me. 3x. And then my constant is negative 10. So I'm going to say negative 10. And I'm equal to 0. That doesn't count. So I'm just equal to 0. And, let's see. Can I factor that last part? Can I factor this? And I think I can. Let me write the first part again. X minus 4. And I think I can say, I could use the ACB method or something like this, but I think I can just spot it. X plus, because my middle term is plus, so I'm going to emphasize that. X plus 5 and x minus 2. I think I can just spot it. So when I multiply this out, my middle term would be negative 2x, and that would be my outside when I FOIL, and my inside would be 5x, and together that would make 3x, right? So the middle works, and then the last one, plus 5, negative 2, that makes negative 10. So yes, I factored this appropriately. And I can't go anymore, so I'm done. I factored it. The main thing was the first part where I got my synthetic division, and I showed, yes, indeed, it is a factor. And I took these coefficients and I put them down, for the next part. Okay.